I returned from a long work trip without warning. My neighbor dropped everything. The Uber had barely stopped in front of my apartment building when Emily Carter looked up from the grocery bag in her arms and saw me. For 3 full seconds, she did not move. Then the bag slipped from her hands. A jar shattered on the sidewalk. Oranges rolled beneath a parked truck, and Emily ran straight at me. She hit my chest hard enough to knock my suitcase over and wrapped both arms around me like she had been holding her breath for 94 days. I felt her shaking. I smelled rosemary, rain, and the familiar citrus soap she always used. Then she whispered, "You came back," with so much relief that my heart forgot how to beat. But the moment I touched her waist, she pulled away. Her face changed. Relief vanished behind anger, and she stared at me as if I had returned from the dead carrying someone else's secrets. "You weren't supposed to be here," she said. Behind her, taped to every apartment door, was the same red notice. 30 days to vacate. If you believe one unexpected return can expose everything 2 people were too afraid to say, like this story, subscribe and tell me, would you trust the person who came back too late? I had left Austin for Seattle at the beginning of March with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and the kind of confidence that comes from believing a temporary assignment cannot rearrange your life. I came home in June with 1 suitcase, no job, and an encrypted drive hidden in the lining of my backpack. Emily did not know any of that. She only knew I had disappeared into a 3-month corporate project, missed half her calls, answered texts with tired 1-line replies, and then returned 2 weeks earlier than planned without warning. From where she stood, surrounded by broken pasta sauce and rolling fruit, I probably looked less like a man coming home and more like a problem she had finally stopped waiting for. "Emily," I said, "what happened here?" Her hazel eyes flicked toward the eviction notice behind me. "You really don't know?" "No." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Of course you don't." She bent to collect the groceries. I crouched beside her, but she pulled an orange out of my reach. "I can help. You've helped enough." The words were quiet. That made them worse. I looked around the courtyard. Willow Creek had never been beautiful, but it had always been alive. Chalk drawings on the walkways, dominoes beneath the pecan tree, grills smoking after 6. Now boxes sat outside half the doors, and a moving truck idled by the laundry room. I picked up the eviction notice and read the name at the bottom. Miller Urban Development, my father's company. The air left my lungs. Emily saw my face and went still. "So you recognize it?" "Yes." "But you didn't know?" "No." She searched me for a lie. Emily was good at that. She worked as a community design coordinator for a housing nonprofit, and at 25, 4 years younger than me, she could make me feel 12 with 1 raised eyebrow. "Your apartment won't open," she said at last. "What?" "Management changed the locks yesterday. They claimed there was water damage, but there wasn't. They emptied 3 units this week while people were at work." I crossed the courtyard and shoved my key into the deadbolt. It did not turn. "Ethan." I tried again, harder. "Ethan, stop." I stepped back, took 1 breath, and kicked beside the latch. The door burst inward. Emily swore behind me. My apartment looked like someone had searched it. Cabinet doors hung open. Desk drawers had been dumped onto the floor. My books were stacked in crooked piles. The framed photograph of my mother that had always sat beside the window was gone. For a moment, I could not move. My mother had died when I was 19. The missing photograph showed her laughing at Barton Springs, hair wet, 1 hand raised toward the camera. It was the last image I had of her that did not involve a hospital room. "Where is it?" I asked. Emily came in slowly. "Your blue box?" I turned. "I have it." She led me across the hall. Her apartment was warm and crowded with plants and sketches, but half her life sat in labeled boxes. 2 suitcases waited near the door. She knelt beside a stack marked kitchen and pulled out a dented blue metal box. I took it with both hands. When management came in, she said, "Mrs. Alvarez called me. I got here before they finished. I told them you had given me permission to store personal documents. I didn't." "I know. You lied to them." I lied very convincingly. Despite everything, the corner of my mouth moved. Emily did not smile back. They were looking for something. My fingers tightened around the box. "What?" "I don't know. They asked if you kept property records here, old leases, ownership papers. Anything from your mother?" A cold line formed down my spine. My father had not spoken my mother's name in years. Why would they ask you? Because I was the person standing between them and your closet. "You should have called me." "I did." I looked up. 6 times, she said. "Then your father called me." The room seemed to narrow. "When?" 3 weeks ago." "What did he say?" Emily folded her arms. "He said the project in Seattle was going better than expected. He said you had decided to stay there permanently. He said you supported redeveloping this property and that I needed to stop confusing a neighborly friendship with influence." My stomach turned. "I never said any of that. I know that now. You believed him then. I believed the part where you weren't answering." There it was. Not accusation. Injury. I set the box on her table. The project consumed everything. Personal phones were restricted during testing. I should have called more. You should have called once when it mattered. I didn't know it mattered. Her expression sharpened. That's the problem, Ethan. You never know what matters until someone puts a deadline on it. Before I left, Emily and I had lived between friendship and something unnamed. We exchanged keys, cooked together twice a week, and knew each other's smallest habits. The night before my flight, she had asked whether 3 months felt long to me. I had said, "It'll go fast." She had nodded as if I had answered a different question. Now her boxes told me exactly how fast it had gone. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Portland." The word landed harder than it should have. I was offered a fellowship with Northwest Community Housing. Adaptive reuse, tenant-led planning, mixed-income projects, the kind of work I've been trying to do for years. "When do you leave?" "Friday." It was Monday. "You accepted?" "Last week." I stared at her. "You were going to leave without telling me." She gave me a look I had no defense against. "You were going to move to Seattle without telling me." I wasn't. "That's what your father said. My father lies when honesty costs him control. And you disappear when honesty costs you comfort." The truth of it burned. A knock sounded at her door. Mrs. Alvarez entered before Emily could answer, followed by her grandson, Mateo, who carried a folder thicker than his arm. "Mr. Ethan," Mrs. Alvarez said, crossing herself when she saw me. Thank God. Mateo, a law student with permanent shadows under his eyes, put the folder on the table. "We have a tenant meeting tonight. We were trying to challenge the notices, but the ownership structure is a mess. Your name keeps appearing in older documents." "My name?" "Not exactly yours. Your mother's." Emily and I looked at each other. Mateo opened the folder and slid forward a photocopy of a deed from 1998. Willow Creek Apartments had once belonged to 2 partners, Richard Miller and Anna Miller, my parents. I read the line twice. My father had always told me the building was one of his early investments, sold years before my mother died. I had never known she owned half. "There's more," Mateo said. "A memorandum references a trust created for you, but the county record is incomplete. We need the original operating agreement or the trust schedule. Without it, Miller Urban can claim sole authority." Emily looked at the blue box. I had not opened it since my mother's funeral. My father's people had searched my apartment for documents from her. Emily had saved the only thing they had not found. I sat on the couch and lifted the rusted latch. Inside were letters, a stopped silver watch, 3 photographs, and a wooden bird I had carved for her when I was 11. Beneath them lay an envelope with my name in her handwriting. I knew every curve of those letters. She wrote capital E's like backward 3s. My hands shook as I opened it. Ethan, if you're reading this, then either I finally became brave enough to tell you the truth, or time made the choice for me. Willow Creek was never just one of your father's investments. It was the first place I bought with money I earned myself. I wanted it to remain a fair beginning for people who needed one. I transferred my interest into the Anna Miller Community Trust, with you as beneficiary when you turn 30. Richard cannot sell or materially alter the property without the trustee's consent. The original agreement is where he would never look, with the first thing we built together. Do not let him convince you that protecting people makes you weak, and do not confuse silence with peace. Silence only gives the loudest person the final word. Love, Mom. My 30th birthday was 6 months away. What does the first thing we built together mean? Emily asked gently. I read the line again. I don't know. Mrs. Alvarez sat beside me. Your mother used to come here every Saturday. She planted the pecan tree. I remember the tree. You were little. You helped her build something in the courtyard. A memory surfaced. Sun on my neck. My mother laughing because I had spilled nails into the grass. Blue paint on both our hands. The old lending library, I said. Emily turned toward the window. In the corner of the courtyard, partly hidden by overgrown jasmine, stood a weathered wooden cabinet on a post. It had not held books in years. Someone had painted over it twice. We crossed the courtyard together. Mateo brought a screwdriver. Emily brought a pry bar. I knelt in the dirt and removed the back panel while half the building watched from balconies. There was nothing inside but a wasp nest and rotted paper. My hope collapsed so visibly that Emily put a hand on my shoulder. Maybe under it, she said. We dug around the post until the shovel struck metal. Beneath 6 inches of hard Texas soil was a narrow steel tube sealed at both ends. Mateo laughed once, almost in disbelief. Inside the tube, wrapped in waxed cloth, were the original trust schedule, the operating agreement, and a notarized letter naming an Austin legal foundation as trustee. The documents were 20 years old, but dry. For the first time since seeing the eviction notices, I felt something other than panic. Then a black SUV turned into the parking lot. My father stepped out. Richard Miller was 61, silver-haired, perfectly dressed, and incapable of looking surprised. 2 men followed him, his attorney and the manager who had changed my locks. My father's gaze went from me to the documents in Mateo's hands. His expression barely changed, which meant he was furious. You came home early, he said. You sound disappointed. You walked off a critical project without transition. I resigned after I learned what it was really built to do. A murmur moved through the tenants. My father glanced at them, then back at me. This is not the place. It is exactly the place. He lowered his voice. You do not understand what you're holding. I understand Mom owned half this property. I understand she created a trust. I understand your company posted illegal notices while searching my apartment for the paperwork. His attorney stepped forward. No one searched. Emily held up her phone. I photographed the apartment before Ethan entered. I also have statements from 4 tenants whose units were accessed without proper notice. My father looked at her as though she were an inconvenience he had expected to remove by now. Ms. Carter, still involving yourself in matters beyond your expertise. Emily's hand left my shoulder, but she did not retreat. Housing is my expertise. You accepted a position in Oregon. Perhaps you should focus on your future. The threat was polished enough to sound like advice. I stepped between them. Do not talk to her. My father's eyes sharpened. You have known this woman for what, a year? 2. And in 2 years, she has managed to pull you into a tenant dispute, sabotage a project worth $40 million, and jeopardize your career. She didn't do any of that. No? He looked at Emily. Did you tell him about the offer? Emily's face went pale. I turned to her. What offer? My father almost smiled. She looked at me, then at the tenants gathered around us. Not here. That has been your answer for weeks, my father said. Not here. Not now. Not yet. Leave, I told him. This property is still under Miller Urban Management. Mateo lifted the trust documents. That authority is now disputed. Until the trustee reviews these, any further lock changes or removals may expose the company to emergency injunctive relief. My father's attorney whispered something to him. Richard adjusted one cuff. 24 hours, Ethan. Then we discuss this privately. No. Tomorrow night. Tenant meeting. Community room. You can discuss it with everyone. His jaw tightened. You are making an emotional decision with consequences you cannot reverse. My mother made the decision. I'm finally listening. He got back into the SUV. When it disappeared onto South Lamar, the courtyard erupted in questions. Mateo began organizing the documents. Mrs. Alvarez hugged me. Someone brought lemonade. Someone else found a folding table. Within minutes, what had looked like a defeated building became a command center. Emily slipped away. I found her in her apartment, kneeling beside the broken grocery bag, wiping tomato sauce from a carton of eggs. What offer? I asked. She kept cleaning. Your father offered to pay my moving expenses and make a donation to my nonprofit if I stopped helping the tenants challenge the sale. How much? $50,000 to the organization. 10 to me. And you refused? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? She stood and threw the stained paper towels into the trash. Because at that point, you had answered exactly 2 messages in 11 days. Then I saw photos from the company gala in Seattle. You were standing beside your father, smiling, while he announced the redevelopment division. I didn't know whether telling you would help the tenants or warn the company. I remembered the gala. My father had put a hand on my shoulder for a photograph 30 seconds after introducing the team that would use my software. I had left before dinner. You thought I was working with him. I didn't want to. That isn't an answer. It's the only honest one. Anger rose in me, fast and unfair. You hugged me like you were afraid I was gone forever, and 5 minutes later I find out you believed I helped evict you. Her eyes flashed. Both things can be true. They shouldn't be. People don't become simple just because you finally come home. I opened my mouth, but she was already moving toward the suitcases. You asked why I ran to you, she said. For 3 months, every car outside made me look through that window. Then your father said you weren't coming back. I packed, accepted Portland, and made a plan without you. She swallowed. Then you stepped out of that car, and my body knew the truth before my pride could stop it. The room went silent. I wanted to cross the distance between us. I wanted to put my hands on her face and answer the confession hidden inside her anger. Instead, I saw the suitcases, the fellowship letter on her table, and all the evidence of how thoroughly my silence had hurt her. I'm sorry, I said. Her expression softened for 1 second, then closed again. Sorry doesn't tell me what happens next. I stopped the sale. And after that? I don't know. She nodded as if I had confirmed her worst expectation. You can sleep on my couch tonight. Your apartment isn't secure and management still has access. But this is not us pretending nothing changed. I wouldn't ask you to pretend." "No," she said. "You would just wait for the difficult part to pass." She handed me a spare blanket and walked into her bedroom. That night, lying on a couch 6 feet from the woman I had missed more than I had admitted, I understood that coming home was not the same as choosing to stay. At 2 in the morning, I heard her bedroom door open. Emily stood in the dark, holding a glass of water. "You're awake," she said. "So are you." She sat in the chair across from me. Moonlight cut across the boxes between us. "Why did you leave the project?" she asked. I hesitated. Her laugh was tired. "There it is." "What?" "The pause where you decide how much truth I can handle." I reached beneath the couch for my backpack and removed the encrypted drive. "The software I built was supposed to identify maintenance risks across large residential portfolios," I said. "Leaking roofs, failing electrical systems, buildings that needed investment before people got hurt. At least that's what I was told." "And what did it actually do?" "It ranked tenants by how expensive they would be to displace." She stared at me. "It combined lease dates, income estimates, complaint histories, age, language, likelihood of legal representation. Buildings with the lowest projected resistance became acquisition targets. Willow Creek was in the pilot data." Her face drained of color. "You saw our names?" "Not at first. Everything was coded. Last Thursday, I found the source files. Addresses, tenant profiles, your nonprofit's public records. My father's team planned to use the system to pressure residents out before the trust matured and before Austin's new relocation rules took effect." "Did you copy it?" I held up the drive. "Everything. If you release that, they'll sue you." "Yes. You could lose your livelihood, your savings, your career." "Yes." She leaned back, studying me differently now. "Why come here first?" "Because you were here," I thought. "Because every hotel room in Seattle felt temporary, and every imagined version of home had your lamp glowing beneath the door." "I needed to know the tenants were safe," I said. "It was true, but not complete." Emily looked toward the window. "You still do it." "What?" "Give the honorable answer instead of the vulnerable one." I sat up. "I came here because this is home." "The building." I held her gaze. "Not only the building." For the first time that day, she stopped protecting herself long enough for me to see hope. Then someone pounded on her door. I opened it to find Lauren Pierce in the hallway, rain on her black coat and fury in her eyes. Emily looked from Lauren to me. Another surprise from Seattle? Lauren had been my college girlfriend and was now the corporate ethics attorney who warned me not to trust my father's project. We had not been together in 7 years. "Ethan," she said, "they used your credentials to approve the deployment." I let her in. She placed a laptop on Emily's table and opened an audit log. My employee ID appeared beside a digital authorization time-stamped Friday at 11:42 p.m. "I was on a plane at 11:42, I said. "I know. Building access logs show your badge left at 6. Richard's chief technology officer used an administrative override." Emily stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. "Why make it look like Ethan approved it?" "To isolate liability if regulators find the discrimination model," Lauren said. "And because Richard assumed Ethan would come back once he realized how much he could lose." "Will he?" Emily asked. Lauren looked at me. "That depends on whether he is finally more afraid of becoming his father than of disappointing him." I flinched because Lauren had always preferred surgical truths. She handed me a printed complaint. Miller Urban had requested an emergency injunction accusing me of theft of trade secrets. A hearing was scheduled for Wednesday morning. If the judge grants it, she said, you cannot disclose the files. They'll seize the drive and your devices. We need to place the evidence with an independent authority before then. Emily looked at the blue box, the trust papers, and the eviction notice on her counter. The tenant meeting is tomorrow night. We may not have until tomorrow night, Lauren said. We do, I replied. My father wants a private deal. He won't move until he thinks I've rejected it. Lauren closed the laptop. Then let him think you're considering one. Emily's face hardened. You want Ethan to negotiate while people are packing? I want time to preserve evidence. And if the negotiation becomes the solution? Lauren's gaze moved between us. That question is not for me. She left to contact a federal housing investigator she trusted. Emily locked the door behind her. You dated her, she said. It was not quite a question. College. For how long? 2 years. She flew from Seattle in the middle of the night to help you. She flew because she helped uncover the fraud and could lose her law license if she stays silent. Emily nodded once, embarrassed by her own question. Right. I could have let it go. The old version of me would have. Instead, I said, there is nothing between Lauren and me. You don't owe me an explanation. I think I do. She looked at me. I also think you asked because it matters. Her mouth parted, but I kept going before courage abandoned me. It matters to me that it matters to you. The silence that followed felt alive. Then Emily whispered, that is not enough. I know. Not after 3 months of almost nothing. I know. Not when I leave Friday. The deadline returned between us. I stood. Then I have 4 days to stop speaking in fragments. A faint, unwilling smile appeared. You're assuming I'll listen? No, I'm hoping you will. She glanced toward the couch. Go to sleep, Ethan. But her voice had softened. By 8 the next morning, Willow Creek's community room was filled with coffee, legal pads, extension cords, and 32 angry residents. Emily stood at the whiteboard in jeans and a green blouse, organizing people into teams. She had not slept more than 3 hours, yet she moved with calm purpose. Documentation table is by the window, she said. Bring every notice, maintenance request, photograph, email, and receipt. Do not give original documents to anyone. Mateo will scan them. Childcare is in the game room. If English is not your first language, we have volunteers for Spanish and Vietnamese arriving at 10. I watched people trust her. Not because she demanded it, because she had earned it in 100 invisible moments while I was gone. She caught me staring. Technology table, back wall. Yes, ma'am. I'm serious. So am I. For the next 6 hours, I traced how Miller Urban had scored the building. Residents with unresolved maintenance complaints had been labeled high friction. Elderly tenants were marked low mobility, not as a vulnerability requiring support, but as a prediction that they would accept cash rather than fight. Families with school-aged children were ranked by the cost of disrupting a move during the academic year. The cruelty was not in any single line of code. It was in the purpose behind the questions. I had written part of that code. At lunch, I found Emily on the back steps eating crackers from a vending machine. You need real food, I said. You sound like my mother. Your mother would have brought something with vegetables. She would have brought enough for the entire building, then complained no one returned her containers. I handed her a breakfast taco. She accepted it. No cilantro? I remembered. You always remember small things. The sadness beneath the words cut deeper than anger. I sat beside her. And miss the large ones? She looked out at the courtyard. Why did you go to Seattle? For the promotion. That's the resume answer. I unwrapped my taco without eating. My father called the project a chance to prove I could lead something important. I spent most of my life refusing to work for him, and somehow that turned into spending most of my life wanting him to notice I was successful without him. Emily waited. When he asked, I told myself I was using his resources to build a safety system. Really, some part of me wanted him to say I had become the kind of man he respected. Did he? He said respect is earned through loyalty. That isn't respect. I know that now. She took a bite, then wiped salsa from her thumb. My father used to promise he would come to my school exhibits. He always had a reason he couldn't. Work, traffic, a headache, one more errand. When I was 16, I won a state design competition. I stood by my model for 3 hours watching the doors. I'm sorry. The next day he bought me expensive drafting pencils. I hated them for years. She looked at me. People think abandonment has to be dramatic. Sometimes it is just someone teaching you over and over that their intentions matter more than their presence. I heard what she was giving me. Not forgiveness, but the map to the wound. I did that to you. You started to. The distinction mattered. What stopped it? I asked. She met my eyes. You came back. The courtyard noise faded. I lifted one hand, slowly enough for her to stop me, and brushed a crumb from the corner of her mouth. Her breath caught. She did not pull away. For one suspended second, the distance between us became a choice. Then Mateo pushed open the back door. We found something. Emily closed her eyes and laughed softly. Of course you did. Inside, Mateo displayed a financial disclosure on the projector. The Portland Fellowship Emily had accepted was funded in part by the Miller Family Foundation. She stared at the screen. No. The grant was approved 6 weeks ago, Mateo said. 2 days after you rejected Richard Miller's offer. I felt sick. Emily stepped closer. Northwest Community Housing recruited me before that. I'm sure they did, Mateo said carefully. Your application was already strong, but the funding expansion created an additional fellowship position. Yours. My father had not merely tried to buy Emily's silence. He had built an honorable-looking exit and placed it in front of her. She turned to me. Did you know? No. Did Lauren? I don't know. Emily pulled out her phone and called the program director. She asked direct questions. Her face remained composed until the person on the other end confirmed that the foundation had recommended her by name. When the call ended, she set the phone down with both hands. I earned that fellowship, she said. Yes, I said. He made it look like I didn't. He manipulated the opening. He did not create your work. But if I go, everyone will think he paid me to leave. No one who knows you will think that. She looked around the crowded room. The people who don't know me are the ones who decide grants, jobs, credibility. The door opened. My father entered alone. He had timed it perfectly. I thought you deserved the full context before tonight, he said. Emily faced him. You used a housing fellowship to remove me from a housing fight. I funded a qualified candidate. You named me, because your work is excellent. Then why didn't you tell me? Would you have accepted? No. Exactly. I crossed the room. You do not get to call manipulation generosity. And you do not get to destroy hundreds of jobs because you discovered business decisions make you uncomfortable. He placed a folder on the table. Here is my proposal. Miller Urban withdraws the eviction notices and funds 18 months of rent stabilization. The property transfers into a joint redevelopment partnership after your 30th birthday. 20% of the units remain affordable. The Portland Fellowship remains fully funded. In exchange, you return the copied files, resign quietly, and confirm the pilot was never deployed. It was deployed, I said. Not publicly. That does not make it legal. It makes it containable. Emily opened the folder. The numbers were real. 18 months would keep families housed. 20% affordable units was better than the 0 my father had planned. Her fellowship would survive. It was the kind of offer designed to make conscience look selfish. My father watched me understand that. You have until 6, he said. After that, counsel proceeds with the injunction. He turned to Emily. Ms. Carter, Portland expects your answer on housing by tomorrow. I suggest you consider whether purity is worth sacrificing practical good. When he left, no one spoke. At last, Emily closed the folder. He is giving us something. He is buying silence. He is also giving Mrs. Alvarez 18 months and taking 80% of the building afterward. People need time now, Ethan. Not a perfect victory later. You think I should take it? I think you should understand what saying no costs people besides you. The room suddenly felt too small. And what does saying yes cost? She looked at the projector, where her fellowship funding remained on screen. Maybe everything I thought I earned. At 5:45, I found Emily alone beneath the pecan tree, staring at the little library my mother and I had built. I'm meeting him at 6, I said. She nodded. I know. I'm not taking the deal. Her eyes closed briefly. Then go in knowing what you're choosing. I am choosing the truth. No. You're choosing uncertainty for 32 families. Truth is part of it. But don't make yourself noble by pretending there is no cost. I sat beside her on the low brick border. Come with me. To negotiate? To make sure I don't turn this into a war between me and my father. She studied me. You trust me to stop you? I trust you to remind me who the decision is for. That was the first time she took my hand. At 6, the community room filled again. My father arrived with 2 attorneys. Lauren arrived with a representative from the Austin Housing Legal Foundation and a federal investigator who had already received a verified copy of the drive. The injunction could still damage me, but it could no longer bury the evidence. My father understood the moment he saw them. You planned this, he said. I documented it, Lauren replied. The foundation representative confirmed that my mother's trust was valid. As beneficiary, I could not take full control until 30, but the trustee could block any sale inconsistent with the trust's housing purpose. The eviction notices were suspended immediately. Relief moved through the room, but I knew suspension was not safety. I placed my father's settlement folder on the table. There will be no joint luxury redevelopment. I am assigning my future beneficial interest to a resident-controlled non-profit on one condition. The residents vote on the long-term plan, and Emily's organization receives no money from Miller Urban. My father stared at me. That interest will be worth millions. Then Mom gave me something valuable enough to protect. She gave it to you, not to strangers. Mrs. Alvarez stood. We are not strangers. Anna knew our names. For the first time, my father looked old. You think this will make you different from me, he said quietly. One day you will learn that every promise has a balance sheet. Maybe. But people do not belong in the loss column. He left without another word. The room erupted, but Emily did not celebrate. She was looking at me with tears in her eyes. Later, after the investigator collected statements and the residents voted to form a cooperative planning committee, I found her in the hallway beside her packed suitcases. You're still leaving, I said. My flight is Friday. The victory inside the community room suddenly felt far away. I love you, I said. She went completely still. I had imagined saying it in 100 safer ways. None of them mattered now. I loved you before Seattle, I continued. I think I knew it every time I bought the coffee you liked without asking, every time I listened for your key in the hall, every time something happened and you were the person I wanted to tell. I went away because I thought ambition required distance. Then I spent 3 months succeeding at something that made me ashamed, and every version of home I pictured had your light under the door. Her tears fell, but she did not move toward me. I'm not asking you to give up Portland, I said. I'm asking for the chance to stop making you guess. If your work takes you there, I will show up there. If it brings you back, I will be here. I don't need you to shrink your life so I can feel chosen. Emily pressed one hand to her mouth. I called the program this afternoon, she said. I told them about the funding manipulation. They offered to defer me until an independent grant replaces the Miller money. For how long? 6 months. Hope hurt almost as much as fear. And what will you do for 6 months? She glanced through the open door at the residents gathered around the plans. Lead Willow Creek's community redesign, if they still want me. They would be lucky to have you. And after 6 months? We decide together, honestly, before the deadline. She crossed the hallway then, put both hands around my face, and kissed me. It was not tentative. It was 3 months of anger, 2 years of restraint, and one future finally spoken out loud. I held her carefully at first, until she pulled me closer and laughed against my mouth. You came back, she whispered. This time, I said, I'm staying on purpose. 6 months later, the red eviction notices had been replaced by children's drawings of the renovated courtyard. Mrs. Alvarez chaired the resident board. Mateo passed the bar. Lauren helped negotiate a settlement that protected the whistleblowers and forced Miller Urban to fund tenant relocation programs across 3 cities. I took a job designing public interest technology and learned that earning less could feel like losing nothing. Emily received independent funding for Portland, but the program offered her a hybrid role so Willow Creek could become its Texas pilot. We kept both apartments and used hers mostly for plants. On the morning I returned from a one-day conference in Dallas, I texted her before my flight, again after landing, and once from the Uber. She was waiting by the bower of rosemary when I arrived, holding a paper bag of oranges. The moment she saw me, she dropped it. Oranges rolled across the sidewalk exactly as they had the first day. Then she ran into my arms, laughing. You knew I was coming, I said. I did. So why drop everything? She kissed me beneath the pecan tree my mother had planted. Because now, she said, I know you'll help me pick it up. And I did. Some people return because a trip is over. Others return because they finally understand where they belong. If this story reminded you that love needs presence, truth, and a choice made out loud, share it with someone worth coming home to.